politically charged?
Well, that I
Do you want
don't.
to just pull that
Yeah.
just a little bit?
Yeah.
Perfect.
Okay. Do. Okay. Uh, Not the politically charged stuff. Sometimes I'm okay with that. It's when I don't know anything about the subject. There was a recent show that we didn't even post to the YouTube page because I was like, let's just forget that show ever happened because it was that bad.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah,
It,
I am the opposite. I just start talking. I preface it with, I don't really know what I'm saying, but I'm gonna roll with it,
yeah,
and then that's where I get into trouble.
that works. I I have years of experience of holding my tongue, working in corporate environments.
What did
So,
you do before? What did you do in a
uh,
past life?
in a past life, that's what I call them too. Like past jobs or past lives. I worked in media. Well, what else did I do? So I worked for Bicoastal Media, which is a very corporate entity, and I was the host of Power 96.3, which is the longest running station in Humboldt County. So yeah. So that was very corporate. That was very much anything I said that could be seen as too far was I had my boss suddenly knocking on my door and being like, "We got to talk." And I'm like, "Oh no.
Not
What did I
again.
not again. Not again."
I would imagine it's kind of a feeling of relief being over where you are now with Access Humboldt because you kind of have a little more leeway with what you can get away with. Or do you? Is that an assumption I'm making wrong?
Well, I went from talking about Kim Kardashian and introducing the newest pop hits to interviewing local individuals about topics that are relevant currently. So, talk radio versus, "Hey everyone, aren't you excited? You know,
I
the
so
Backstreet Boys are going back on tour."
yeah. So I'm guessing you don't really miss that.
I do actually. I do miss
Really? You
it.
like that
I
stuff?
loved it. I am
Did you like the content or just being able to talk with the audience and kind of do your own thing on there?
Yeah, well, I enjoy music. I love music a lot, and then the fact that the main age group was parents and their kids was kind of nice because I got a lot of feedback from kids just being like, "This is so cool. Like, thanks for playing my song. Can I hear this one?" And I remember being that kid calling into the radio station being like, "Can you play the newest Britney Spears? I love the Wallflowers. Play more Wallflowers." And so I was like, "Hey, it's, payback time for all the DJs that I bothered when I was a kid." And I
The
thought it was
DJ thing was
adorable.
huge back in the day.
Oh, it was big.
I wish I would have been around to see that.
I wish I were working when that happened. That
The
would've been cool.
70s, the DJ, the ambiance, the you're running the show. You're out on
Yeah.
the radio. You're a radio guy. Now it's like, "Oh, you're doing the radio? That's what you're doing?"
Well, not necessarily. It still has some. I mean, I wait tables and bartend. That does not come with the same prestige as me having certain other jobs in my life, but that's how I always, when I'm introduced to people or people ask me what I do, I go, I wait tables just because I want them to be their genuine selves. Is that the rain?
That's the rain.
Oh gosh.
I know it's the weather outside is a little hectic today.
It's supposed to snow tomorrow
I didn't know that.
or Wednesday, Thursday. So,
So you
um,
open with, I do this. You don't open with, "Oh yeah, I'm doing my own Access Humboldt show."
no, gosh, no. Because when people find out you're in media, they treat you differently than if they find out you're in the service industry. And I trust how people act to their, if I'm on a date or something and they treat their waiter terribly, they're out. And the way people react to me when they find out I'm in the service industry is how I judge them forever. Like, guys will hit on me or something and be like, "Oh, what do you do?" And I'm like, "I wait tables." Or I'll even say like I'm a host or something that people consider, which, not that there's rankings. Everybody's very, very, very important in a restaurant. Dish pit is actually the most important position. And the way people treat somebody or treat me finding out that, "Oh, you're service industry." Then they find out later and they're suddenly interested. They're like, "You need to lead with that." And I'm like, "No, I don't."
They
No,
find out about the Access Humboldt show
not the Access Humboldt,
or
just
just radio.
media or anything else I do. I mean, I have a lot of different jobs. It's juggle a lot of different balls because you have to. It's the Humboldt hustle. and you either get good at it or you got to go somewhere and work a 9 to 5 where you can afford that life just working a 9 to 5.
So it's kind of your litmus test to
Yeah.
gauge a person's
Oh,
character.
absolutely. It's a great way to judge people.
It's kinda sad that that has to be a litmus test. That, oh, yeah, you have to gauge somebody how they're gonna respond by saying, "Oh, yeah, this is what I do for work."
Well,
Not in terms of you having to use that, but in terms of people looking down on that field of
right.
work.
Yeah. I agree. People are strange and they have these preconceived notions in their head of what is appropriate for a person to do, what is an adult job versus what is not an adult job. And the funny thing is all my coworkers in the service industry, most of them also have other jobs. Some of them are teachers or which that's the worst part because you think a teacher should be making enough to just teach. Like that is like have you dealt with children? They're a lot, and that should be just one of the
It's a full-time
highest.
job.
That is a full-time job, they take it home, and then they have to go and, wait tables to make ends meet. It's just ridiculous. It's just preposterous to me. Um,
I don't tell anybody I do a podcast. I keep that that's not my litmus test.
yeah.
Yeah, I don't
What
tell anybody.
what do you do in real life?
I do construction stuff, I do
Yeah,
upholstery, labor jobs,
yeah.
nothing special. I lead with that. I've never used it as a litmus test, but you can kinda gauge somebody's response and they're like, "Oh, that's what you do?" You're like, "Oh, okay." Make a mental note of that.
Right. Well, then there's also the other side of people finding out you're in media or, "Oh, you've got a podcast." That's sweet. You actually have a pretty successful podcast.
Well, let's not get crazy.
I mean, it's not you have a podcast that's actually a
I have a
podcast.
garage with a
You
podcast, so I mean,
do.
I'm getting
Yeah.
up there, you know?
You have a garage. A lot of people don't have a garage. There's a lot of
True.
people who started out in garages, and I remember my friend running she has a death podcast that just all death topics. I forget which one I was on. I wanted to do dead
Death like
presidents
a
or something.
crime death or death like just people
Sometimes
dying? Okay.
Sometimes. I wanted to do a dead presidents one, talk about how presidents died and things like that, but I did one instead, which was prison deaths or something like that, and maybe strange, mysterious, like, did they really know Epstein didn't kill himself sort of stuff. And it was fun. It was a lot of fun, but she was sitting in her room and had it like all padded and stuff because that's what you have to do. I'm working on my own home studio right now and it's not good. It's really this is actually pretty amazing. I'm like, "Okay."
Well, I mean, I started on a pool table at my parents' house. So, humble beginnings, I think, is
So
where
did I.
everybody
How did
starts.
no,
Yeah,
it's a
right?
totally different
Isn't that the
scenario.
standard? Isn't that
No,
how we all start?
no.
Yeah. It's it's a fun process kinda creating your own thing. I'm sure you know all about that.
Yeah, it's fun. That's for
Fun, it
sure.
comes with its own troubles, but it's fun. I enjoy it. I enjoy talking to people. I enjoy getting to meet you.
Right? I was like, "Have we even met before?"
Nope.
Yeah, I didn't think so. I was wondering because I had a friend in school with your same name, and I was
Is
like
this
in
happening?
grade school.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, and I was like, "What would he be doing in Humboldt?" Uh, it's a small
Running a
world.
podcast.
Running a podcast, doing construction. What else is anybody doing in Humboldt County?
How long have you been doing your show? So Thursday Night Talk, that's actually how I came across you.
Yes. Thursday Night Talks has been running far longer than I've been hosting. It was part of KHSU for at least a decade. It was Lorna Bryant. I feel bad if I messed up her name. Uh, though she was the host for a very long time. When KHSU left, the show left, and so now there's a resurgence happening where they tried it with Eric, who also hosts Redwood Wonk, and Eric. I think this was a story. Eric just was doing a lot of other things, so Matt Knight, who's the producer, was all, "Hey, Talvi, what are you up to on every Thursday night for the rest of your life?" And I went, "Oh, I guess I'm doing this now." Which I'm on the board for Access Humboldt, and I felt it was a way to give back because one of the biggest factors is get content. Try to get content for Access Humboldt because it's a local radio station, local TV show or stations. So So I went, "Okay, here's my contribution. Let me see what I can do." And so far, it seems to be doing pretty well. People respond well to it. I'm happy about that. A lot of people who watched or listened to the show before came back and started listening again, and they think I'm doing great. So good. Sometimes I have a show and I go, "Oh man, I did terrible," and then the producer and everyone's like, "That was awesome," and I'm like, "Okay, okay." I didn't completely flub that one. Oh,
I had, Matt Knight on the podcast, and that's all he
oh,
talked about was, "Oh, yeah, we need content. Content is the name of the game. We're just
yeah.
always looking to fill a spot."
I'm surprised he didn't convince you to put
He tried. He worked on it. My only hang up was the censorship aspect of being on the radio, and I think
uh
you had to limit some words for their online content maybe too?
the
Just
7
the 7
the 7 deadly
deadly
words.
yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, he was telling
yeah.
me about that, and that's kind of
It's not too
what hung me
difficult.
up.
You just kind of bleep it out or pretty much just go through and bleep them out, and it's easy. He'd probably do it for you.
Mhm.
And you oh, for radio, you definitely have to. For the TV station, if it contains content that could be inappropriate for, say, a young audience, it just played at night.
Do you guys have a problem in that regard of people just not wanting to put content out because of the censorship, or is it just people creating content?
It's people creating content. We are in a very small community. So there's, what, 38,000 people in Eureka, 75,000, 78,000, or something like that in all of Humboldt County. And the cool part about Humboldt is everybody's an artist. Literally everybody is doing something amazing. It's just, do they have the tech to record it? Do they even know that Access Humboldt's there? And that's another one of at least my missions being on the board is make sure people know about Access Humboldt because you can rent all the equipment. They'll rent, microphones, computers, everything so that the content can be created. And they'll teach you how to use it. So pretty awesome that we've got that here, though I think maybe people sometimes have all these ideas and they just don't know how to form it into, when you had an idea for a podcast, you started off on a pool table. I'm sure you weren't like, man, I'm going to be sitting in a garage one day with all this really super cool equipment, making this the best show I can. As a kid with my little tape recorder, recording random commercials with me and my friends, trying to be like, I'm going to be a DJ one day. It wasn't, I had no idea what I was doing back then. And I wish Access Humboldt had been a program, though there weren't media creator programs where I grew up, which is ridiculous to say because I grew up in Orange County. So I'm sure they're where, I just didn't know about them. Maybe if I grew up at one of the cool artsy schools in Los Angeles, I would have been like, "Oh, look at all this stuff." I didn't even know it was an option and had no idea that, oh, all it would have taken as a kid would have been for me to go to, say, you know, anybody else creating content, probably yearbook people or something like that, and being like, "I wanna do that."
Well, and I think that's I mean, you guys provide a great resource
Yeah.
with the equipment, with the instructions. I think it's just getting people to acknowledge, "Oh, this is there." Like, take advantage of it because I would
Yeah.
have utilized you guys had I known about you, but I didn't find out, I think,
Right.
until a little while before Matt came on.
Yeah,
It's just you
that
guys are
makes
kinda
sense.
tucked away, and I went to Eureka High School, and I didn't know you guys were over there
Oh,
when I was in
yeah.
school.
Yeah, we just moved over to College of the Redwoods, but we were there for
A while.
a long time. It felt very odd the first time I went to sign up because I hadn't been on a high school campus for so long, and I was like, "Flashbacks, flashbacks to high school, oh no." And so I walked up and got, signed up for everything and took some classes, and that was like 10 years ago. But yeah, there was a student program over at Eureka High School. Now there is a student program over at CR. There's still a student program for high school students. I think it's discounted or free if you're a student to join Access Humboldt, and the classes then are free. And equipment rentals still cost a little bit. It's like something like $7.
Which is nothing compared to the
It's
price of the
nothing.
equipment.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely nothing. This is some really nice stuff. So yeah, that's the goal is getting the word out there. We're working with the libraries right now, trying to at least create a display over at the main Eureka library that just, this is Access Humboldt. You can be on TV. You can be a TV star locally if you can. Humboldt famous. You can be Humboldt famous, which doesn't every kid dream of being Humboldt famous?
Yeah, it's up there probably. And so you kinda took up the mantle for Thursday Night Talk just to fill that content void.
Yeah. And because it's something I wanted to do, I figured it's a great step for me to I don't like not being in media in some facet or another. So when I left the corporate media world, I went and joined an airline and that was fun. A whole different corporate world. And I missed having a show. I missed being in front of a microphone and talking to people or just listening to stories, but also having some sense of I'm helping, I like being somehow part of. I'm a joiner. There are some people who are like, "Oh, who cares about anything like that?" And, school assemblies and stuff, things like that. I was always a kid raising my hand being like, "I'll do it. I'll always do it. I volunteer as tribute, let's do it all." And it's a good outlet for me. I need some sense of accountability too in my life. It forces me to pay attention to what's going on in Humboldt County, and there's always a lot going on, and it's hard to turn my mind off anyway. But this gives me I'm going to focus on this week because I'm going to have guests talking about it, and it helps me force my mind to not over intake information. Just like I'm focusing on this week. Yes, I'm going to read other articles and figure stuff out and talk to other people about different things, but this is the main subject. Let's discuss.
So you can kinda hone in your focus a little bit.
Sometimes it's that's the goal. That's not necessarily the actuality.
So are you doing a lot of prep work for your shows? Or are you just kinda reading
Uh,
articles based on where you wanna take it that week?
so it depends. Sometimes I'll have an idea. Sometimes Matt, the producer, has his ideas, which can be a little difficult because I'm like I have no clue when it comes to things. When it comes to certain topics, I don't know anything about it, and so then I have to really dig deep and be like, okay. And there is an issue with having a weekly show where finding the right guests to be on it and then having them actually show up. There's an issue in Humboldt County of getting people, which I'm sure you're very aware of, getting people to be there. And sometimes we have to last minute switch things out, which can change the entire dynamic of a show. If I have 3 guests and one is specialized in this, another's specialized in this, another's specialized in that, I wanna try to talk about what they're specializing in, and so if one person leaves and another person joins and they have a completely different thing going on in their life, I go, "Oh, okay, I've got, an hour how to figure out how to make it so this person feels like they aren't a last minute toss in." Because they're not, I mean, sometimes they are, but
You wanna make them feel included, like they're a real asset to the conversation.
yeah, and I want them to be an asset, and that's the job of a host is you create a space where people can talk about what they're good at talking about and sometimes trying to push boundaries a little bit. That is one thing sometimes I get done with the show and I go, "Wow, I really should have pushed harder on this." But it's a 1-hour show once a week. It's not exactly, it's not me having 4 hours 5 days a week to talk. Well, I mean, the overall talking for a music station is very different, but yeah, I try. I
That is
try.
a hard line to walk. The pressing too hard, but not over pressing.
Yeah, and I'll notice, especially I force myself to rewatch episodes because the goal is to get better at what I do. At least in my mind, everything I do, I'm like, I wanna get better at it. Even if I'm, just waiting tables, you run through your mind of like, "I forgot to get that person their to-go box. I forgot to get this. I need to really be focused on this. I need to pay attention to, what" if I work with this person, they need this more, like, support in this way more, whereas this person needs this support. Like, I always try to be like, what am I gonna do better next time? And the same with anything, including hosting a show. It's okay. I need to be more refreshed. I need to get more sleep. I need to I need to research more about what people do beyond just because I get a sometimes I'll bring the guests on, sometimes Matt finds the guests. Usually it's Matt doing all the coordinating, which is weird having a producer too, because when I worked in corporate media, I was doing everything. It was production, running my own soundboard, hosting, writing my own content. Uh, it was, trying to do sales pitches, stuff like that while doing that all. So it was all me. And so now I suddenly have a producer and I think that's great. I was like, wow, this is really nice, though it's having that open communication. And we tried for a minute where, like, we'd have a call once a week a few days before and be like, "Hey, what's the update? What's going on? What are we doing with the show this week?" And that would give me time to be like, "Okay, let me prepare better." And then we stopped doing that for a minute, and I was like, "Nope, no, we need to go back. We need to go back to that. We need to have because my mind will go all over the place and like what is the actual concept of this show needs to be pinned down for me, especially when I get guests that I want to talk to them about a million other things. I'm like, "Wow, I got this person on this show, but we're talking about this." And I really want to talk to them about that, but I have to save it for a different show. I'm not sure if that answered your question. I forgot the question.
It was just I was going more so the forcefulness or not forcefulness, but
The
knowing
walking the
yeah,
line.
knowing when too much is too much. Because I feel like
Yeah.
I struggle with that. And
I don't
I've
wanna be Howard Stern.
I kinda
Okay, I kinda do wanna
I
be
mean,
Howard
right?
Stern. We all wanna be Howard Stern with the ability to do whatever you want. But you don't wanna be Howard Stern well, I don't want it personally. I want the ability to do want the freedom to do whatever, but
Well, I
n
think
I don't know, I'd have everyone, like, doing a chicken dance or something. It would just be
the chicken dance, that would be your go-to.
well, I don't know, first thing I came up with.
It's not I mean, it's I think Howard Stern is Howard Stern for the same reason Barbara Walters is Barbara Walters, and
Yeah.
it's that they were willing to ask the questions everybody wanted to ask, but some people would stop themselves from asking. I think that's what separates a great interviewer from a good one is knowing
It's not only that, it's a comfort level. When people sit down with Barbara Walters, she would I mean, sometimes she would press, and actually I've watched quite a bit of Barbara Walters. There were some times where I was like, "Wow, she's being a bully." And I not to speak ill of the deceased, she's did a fantastic job. I don't know if I really wanna make people feel that uncomfortable, but then there'd be times where she just connects with a guest and they just open up to her, and the same with Howard Stern. Somehow he got people really, really comfortable, and they let their defenses down so much that they'd say things that would haunt them for the rest of their lives, and I guess that would be great to have. I would love to be a comfort for other people for different reasons than what Howard Stern wants, and perhaps for a different reason than what Barbara Walters wants, which they both want the ratings. I'll take the ratings too. I mean, I get 50 views on YouTube. I know more people watch it on TV and listen to it on radio, but it's always hard to know what is your viewership and what do people want unless they give you feedback, which was one thing that working in corporate, I had a I had a telephone with a direct line and people got comfortable enough with me being on air that they just call me up and start talking about their day, which wouldn't go on air. I'd be like, I have to do a job. I'm here to talk about, Britney Spears' latest episode. I'm not here to talk about, but I'd sit there and talk to people because I felt for them. It was cute. I had this one grandma, she had kids that had moved away and she was just lonely and she called me all the time and I was like, I have to get off the phone now. And she'd be like, okay, well, did you know like the mailman came by the other day? And I'm like, oh, that's so sweet. We've been on the phone for 30 minutes. I have to go. Like I have a show to do.
So you really like that feedback aspect coming from the audience.
Yes, and I far prefer it from the audience than my boss. That's for sure. That was, one thing in corporate that not the, I like feedback in any form if it's act actually gonna be helpful, though
Constructive criticism.
constructive criticism is amazing. The "you suck" part is not amazing. The "you gotta do things my way." I'm like, "Then you hired me to be in front of this microphone. You paid me minimum wage to be in front of a microphone while everyone gets paid 5 times as much. Do you want me to roast or to run the show, or do you not?" Like, I wouldn't say it like that, obviously, because you don't talk to your boss like that, but it was very frustrating sometimes to have this super high standard over my head when there was no good jobs. I need that positive affirmation sort of.
It was all critical when
It
it was
felt
coming
very
down.
all critical. I mean, for every how they say, like, for every 1 criticism, you're supposed to give 5 positive critiques. For every negative, you give 5 positives or something like that. Should be 10 positives. So that way you don't break somebody down. Like, when you go up to somebody, you're like, "Oh," if it's I have an inner child, so I always like refer to, when you're trying to teach a kid what to do and, you're trying to teach him to draw, you know, you go, "Oh, that's wonderful. Your color theory is really there. If you want to sharpen those lines, let me show you how." Like it was
Kinda guide them a little bit.
guide them. Yeah, instead of you suck and you're terrible, you're never going to be an artist. You should just throw that away and pick up a dustbin because you're gonna be sweeping hallways for the rest of your life, which that's a great job too. No, no, I don't know if that's anybody out there who does that. That's a hard job. Uh, but yeah, it kind of felt like that in corporate environments of, and then I'd be have listeners that would give a lot of positive feedback. And so I kind of enjoyed that. And it was nice to connect with people when they were like, "Wow, I felt really good," or I felt educated, or I felt, because I always tried to. I'm a little bit of a nerd sometimes, so I tried, especially knowing that my audience and my demographic was people with kids in their cars, driving them to school, or students. I'd be like, "Oh, let me slip some science in there. Let me," my trivia questions would be, according to my coworkers and my boss, they were like, "What are you asking these people to answer?" And I'm like, "These are things that you learn in grade school, and a lot of people forget them, but it's basic science." So, you know, asking about cloud types or weather systems or planetary matters, and it'd just be like, "Hey, like, which constellation does this?" And those would be my trivia questions where they're like, "No, just ask them what the number 1, pickle flavor is." And I'm like, "I don't wanna do that. I wanna ask them, do you know the enzyme process of creating pickles?" And so I got a lot of feedback on that from listeners, and I enjoyed that part. The part I like making people feel good. Perhaps that's why I, like, refuse to get out of the service industry too. It's just food and drinks and entertainment are really easy ways to make people happy. I mean, I wouldn't say easy. There's a lot that goes on in order to make people feel good about themselves. Though it's a way to do it. You can have a show and play a song for somebody and they feel really special. Like that DJ played my song for me. And I love that song and I got to listen to it. And all my friends got to hear my name on the radio and I'm a special individual. And it's like, yeah, you are special and you do deserve somebody to play a song that you want to hear. I loved doing that. And so to go behind the scenes and have my boss be like, "You suck today." It's just like,
Well, I would imagine it
oh.
sucked a little bit in the sense that it sounds like your audience was giving you positive feedback, and then
Majority,
your boss is
majority.
saying, "No, you're doing this wrong," which would kind of fuck with your head a little bit, I would imagine,
Yeah,
because 'cause you're getting the audience likes it, which is who you're trying to appeal to, but your
right.
boss doesn't want you to do this
Well,
way.
what they're worried about is money, and I
The bottom
understand.
line.
The bottom line is money, though I was bringing in money. I had sponsorships,
So was it
and
just you weren't doing it the way that they wanted you to do it?
I don't know. It was very confusing sometimes. It was I did appreciate, she doesn't even work in the county anymore, she retired. Like, I left and, like, 5 other people left. So so it's I don't know what that means. But I think she was ready for retirement anyway, though she would do some cool things. I'm not gonna say, like, it was all bad, but
This is your boss,
the former
the
boss.
former boss.
Former boss, former boss. Yeah, this is corporate world, which I've worked in several corporate media scapes, and this is just one of them. If anybody out there is listening to this, which I doubt any of those anybody that I worked under would, but it's probably not you I'm talking about. So just assume it isn't, because all of my bosses in Humboldt County have been wonderful and fantastic. They have no issues to them. Love them so much. Send me your address and I'll give you a Christmas card. uh, the one good thing was because I started off, I didn't have formal training. I started off doing media as a little kid with my tape recorder, splicing a tape together, listening to the radio, recording songs, making albums, like mixtapes off the radio, and recording. Like when I finally got a CD, I think I was maybe 10, like a CD player tape, double tape deck. Very exciting because you could record from one to the other and then have the CD player, and it had a little microphone thing. So you could talk into like, I didn't have a microphone attachment, but like you could talk into it. I thought it was the coolest thing. And I remember just sitting there like working on my own as a little kid trying to figure things out. And then my mom started a DJ business when I was 13. So I would with her. And here's how I ended up behind the microphone she had a boyfriend. That's why she started the DJ business. He wanted to retire or stop doing his he had like some analysis position for testing toxins in construction environments, essentially, or like big building environments. He tests for asbestos and things like that. He hated it. And so my mom's like, okay, well, like, you want to be a DJ. And then unfortunately, he had a horrible alcohol problem. And so as a kid, I would go and help set up and be his roadie. And then he'd drink himself under the table and I would take over. And I was kind of there to make sure that he was okay, and not causing too many problems, because he would lose jobs for doing that. Note to everyone out there, you will lose jobs if you're a raging alcoholic on the clock. Uh, wait till after. Wait till after the show. And so I'd step in as like a 13-year-old. I'd step in and be this DJ for like bat mitzvahs and weddings and things like that. And so I didn't have the formal training. So one thing, especially for commercial radio, and I started off as a board operator and sound technician, doing all that for like actually getting paid for it, which was awesome. And then, recording commercials and doing the sound editing for that. And then, was a producer for a DJ for a minute. And then they were like, hey, it's your turn to sit in the seat. And I went, I applied for the job, as everybody has to do, even if you're in the same company. That's another. I just love giving tips and tricks to people. Even if you're in a company and you think you're up next for the position, you still got to apply.
You can keep talking. I'm sorry, we're having a little bit of technical difficulties
Oh
with
no.
this camera. Which is...
I'm like, I'll just keep going.
Yeah, you can just keep monologuing if you'd like.
Okay. Well, let me water break.
Sorry about that. I've learned that in the world of podcasting, if something can go wrong,
Oh, it will.
it will, and that's you just deal with that.
Yeah.
That's all part of the fun.
I literally had my entire computer shut down during a show.
Oh,
Mhm.
Did it save the show?
So we record live,
Okay.
but suddenly me disappearing as a host is not a good thing.
It might mess with the ambiance
Yeah.
a little bit.
Yeah.
I could see that happening.
I just relogged in with my phone for it, but yeah. So anywho, I didn't have formal training, and so started
Well,
off.
starting out at 13 years old, just being thrown into the fire is almost the best way you could be trained. You just have to
Yeah, but
roll with the punches.
that was a live DJ sort of thing.
How long did that last? Did
The-
any shows, or did any radio execs say, "Hey, why is this 13-year-old
So it
girl
wasn't
on it?"
okay, so it wasn't a radio show. No, this is like bat mitzvahs, bar mitzvahs, weddings,
Oh, so he's just live DJing.
live DJ, bars.
Okay.
Being a teenager at a bar was great. I'm with the DJ. It's it's fun. No, this wasn't like, "Oh, we're recording anything."
Okay, I thought he was going to these places and recording and
No, no,
just
no, no.
passing out on air.
No. Gosh, no, no. He was, I mean, it is somebody's wedding, though. Like,
Yeah, I'm
you
not a good look,
not
not
a
a
good
professional
look,
standard to set.
or at a bar or restaurant or all the different places. Yeah, that was a strange time, and that lasted, I kinda started, moving or hanging out with my dad more at that time because he started picking up that I shouldn't be hanging out at bars with all my mom's friends or my mom's boyfriend's weirdo friends, and it was not a good scene for a kid to be in, let's just say that. So I moved with my dad, or pretty much, it was in my best interest to not live, in that situation anymore is pretty much what happened there. Then I moved back, and then back and forth between my dad and mom a while, and then I moved to Montana and with my dad because he was retiring out there. Then my mom had moved to Vegas to continue the DJ life, and I moved out to Vegas because I had graduated. UNLV had a program for kids, so I got my GED and HED, and then started at UNLV, and that was when I was 16, and so I was still helping out with the DJ thing for a while there, and it was alcoholism gets you, and so it kind of all fell apart. My mom ended up leaving that guy. He ended up selling all the equipment and everything, even though it was my mom's. And I was very, very upset because I was like, Mom, you could have continued this. She's like, I know, but I really wanted him gone. So I let him take it and use the money to get out. And so that was the end of my mom's career as a owning a DJ company. Is alcoholism gets you, or having an alcoholic boyfriend will get you. uh, and at that point, I was at university, so I didn't. I was working at Payless shoe stores, and then as soon as I turned 21, I started bartending. Oh, well, and waiting tables.
So you always was this a path that you knew you wanted to go down? Was the DJ,
Yes. So
radio?
in 8th grade, I did my, career day report on being a DJ. So, yeah. Yeah, I kinda knew. I kinda knew very, very young. I was like, "This is what I wanna do." I had a horrible, fear of public speaking. I failed public speaking 3 times in college. 4th time, I got the highest grade in class, and so, I mean, it's like, I literally go up and just be shaking. I couldn't when with anything. It wasn't, which is weird because I was always the kid to volunteer. I'm still the person to volunteer for everything, but when it comes down to me presenting something and not just being part of, like, it's different if you're dancing on a stage or, playing a game. It's very different than, "Oh, I'm the one in charge now. I'm the one giving this presentation. I'm the one
You're in
tell
the spotlight.
I'm in the spotlight." I didn't realize that, oh, I don't actually like being in the spotlight, which radio is perfect for that. Radio is great for that. You don't have to be in the spotlight. You can be in the background and just be a voice. And that's, in 4th, 5th, 6th grade, I was in choir, which loved waking up at like 6:30 in the morning on Fridays. I've never been a morning person. And I think it's a testament to myself because I didn't, nobody took me to school. Nobody signed me up for these extracurricular activities. I just would go and I was the announcer. I would just announce all the songs. I would announce the people, announce the things. And even when I did plays, I was in theater, and I didn't wanna be on stage. I wanted to write, I wanted to direct, and I was happy being the announcer, uh, or the narrator or what have you, the character in the shadows that just talks, just that creeper in the background, you know? That way no one can see, like, the Cheeto dust on my shirt. It worked well for me. So got past the public speaking part, went into corporate, after a while, and okay, there was a big step to get to that point. I started doing comedy, stand-up comedy, and the first time I went up, I was so scared. And I don't recommend anybody doing this. I drank a lot. And I had been waiting. I had been going to open mics for months and months and months and months. And I'd even been dating somebody, and the one thing that they would be willing to go out and do, because I like to go out. I enjoy going out to eat and seeing shows and doing things like that. I just love to do that. And the only thing I could get him to go to would either be like a movie or comedy. And so we'd go to the comedy shows. And then one day I tell him, I'm like, I'm going to go on stage one of these days. And he said, ha, you are not funny. You cannot do that. And so I made it my mission to make sure that my face was flyered around town. I was producing shows at one point. I was hosting, but it took a long time. It took a couple years of me going on stage and getting comfortable. I traveled a little bit to get better at my public presentation. Started asking friends to record me because I was so awkward. I didn't believe how awkward I was. My co-comedians would be like, "Girl, you need to start watching your own videos. Like, you can be totally cool, and then you go and take that mic, and you are the weirdest person in the like, it's uncomfortable." And so I went, "That can't be that bad." And then I watched myself. It was so bad. It was the weirdest. Like, I'd do this like weird head bob thing, and I'd be like, "Bleh." It was terrible. So I had to get over that and forced myself to go and did open mics, and got on shows too, from in Vegas and Los Angeles and up here, and I started doing a thing, and then started working for a radio station and set myself up to go there, but I didn't have the formal radio training. Back to that, and so one thing that my boss and coworkers would do was they'd take me aside and we'd have like faux interviews, and they especially my boss would really go hard on it. She'd be like, "Okay, you gotta, like, work on the interview technique," and I'm still trying, I'm still learning, I'm not very good. I'll be the first to admit I have a lot of room for improvement, but I'm enjoying the learning process, and I'm enjoying trying to be a good host. And through comedy, I realized I don't like being the stand-up comic, I like being the host. I like putting shows together. I like being in the background and recording things. I don't like the spotlight on me. It's like when people think about weddings. I think about myself as the bartender. I think about myself as, the person arranging chairs or helping with catering or setting up floral arrangements. I never think of myself as the bride. Like I don't want to. And
So
that's
was it hard then stepping into Thursday Night Talk and having the camera on you? Was that your first experience where you're doing the radio thing, but it's also the visual aspect of now
so
they can see you?
I had hosted a few TV programs in the area for nonprofits. So I had done the PBS Keat auctions, and
So you'd been on camera a few times.
I had been on camera a few times, been in commercials, things like that. And I enjoy doing I enjoy filming. There's a group out here called TK Studios. I don't know if you know them. They have some very interesting projects that they work on. I've done background acting. Again, I don't mind being in the background. It's Yeah, so I was a little uncomfortable with it at first. I'm very, insecure about how I look, and I realized just like with public speaking, like I said, I failed 3 times in college, and the 4th time I just went, "Nobody cares what I look like. I don't care what I look like anymore. Good enough is good enough, and if I sit there and worry in my head all the time about what I look like and what I sound like and what's going on, I end up just in a like curled up in a ball crying in my apartment, not able to leave. And I can't live like that. And I want to live and have a decent life. And I want to do what I want to do. And I can't let fear get to me or my insecurities or whatever it is.
Was that a big root cause of the fear of public speaking? Was just the eyes on you and your physical appearance?
I think so. I'm very vain. uh yeah, I think it was a mix
Just a combination of all of it.
of all of it. Yeah. I had huge agoraphobia issues when I was a kid and ended up I ended up dropping out of my freshman year of high school and doing independent studies because I couldn't take the anxiety of just walking through a campus. And so, worked heavily on it with therapists. So but it was an issue. It's, debilitating anxiety is real, and I still have that fear, and I will say the pandemic did not help me
I would imagine.
because I went from, I was working in corporate media, I was hosting events and being on camera and doing all this stuff, and then suddenly I'm in the studio alone again, and I was like, "Oh, no," and it becomes very comfortable being alone, and I had to the world opened up, and it's one thing when I'm working, but to be able to just go out on my own and do something is kind of it really, it takes a lot, and I love how my friends are like, "Oh, you just walk into the room like you own it," or some people think I'm cold, and it's like, "No, that's my psychotic anxiety, and I'm just trying to," they call it masking, where you just, or the server smile. Like, "No, I'm terrified." Like, sometimes I'm just terrified, and the reason I'm not being outgoing is I'm just scared. Like, it's not I have to the people closest to me, I'm like, "Oh, I think those people think I'm a jerk now because they were trying to talk to me, and I didn't say anything to them." And I'm like, "I'm not trying to be a jerk. I'm just, trying to fight, like, the in my head that's telling me everything's awful about myself." And yeah.
I don't know what agoraphobia is.
Agoraphobia is the fear of kind of public crowded spaces. Like I This is really, really bad, but the reason I dropped out of freshman year of high school, I couldn't leave my house for like a month.
Just for fear of eyes being on you?
Just for yeah. Uh it's an irrational fear, hence the phobia. It's terrible. I had a rough childhood, and that definitely stems in it. I think there became this awareness of like, oh, I am a human, and I'm also very, very tall. I'm 6'2", and so people would look at me, and now I realize, cool. Like I loved being tall back then because, well, sports was my outlet of, if people are gonna look at me be good at something. And yeah, it's just it was ridiculous. It was ridiculous, and it took a long time to get over. And I still have to be careful of it because if I isolate too long, then somehow that anxiety starts popping up. Like, I am very aware now what it is and that it's completely ridiculous, and I have to be careful all the same because if I isolate too long, then I get comfortable and I go, "I'm happy here. I'm not happy out there."
And then it's just it's a slippery slope. You
It's
get
a
into that cycle
yeah.
of, "No, I'm okay. I'll stay in more. I just won't go
Yeah,
do these things." And then it
right.
just keeps feeding off of that process.
Pretty much, yeah.
So how did you so you dropped out of high school.
And then, well, I went into independent study programs,
Okay.
and then I went into an accelerated, I guess they call it a continuation school, but it had an accelerated program as well. I actually became, part of the associated student body. I think I was treasurer for a minute, and then like for a semester, and then secretary for another semester. And I actually took a journalism class at that school. It was pretty cool. They It was a great school. Everyone thinks of, "Oh, a continuation high school, that's for, like, drug addicts and, like, the pregnant teenagers." Yeah, yeah, it was. It was also for kids with, who needed an alternative plan, and my entire goal was to get out of high school as quickly as possible. So I did. When I went and moved with my dad to Montana, the school out there said, "No, we don't have an accelerated program here." And I said, "Okay then, bye." And I went and got my GED and HED and then went to university because I really didn't wanna deal with this. High school can be great for a lot of different personality types. I was very, very, very bored, and I also had the anxiety issues, and I just didn't want to. And I was, I guess you could call it, I was a creative kid. I wanted to sit in my room and play with my radio and draw pictures and paint things and dress silly with weird costumes and just do what I wanted to do. I wanted to hang out with my cats, to be honest.
And so how did you work through that? Because
Uh,
that's, I mean, to go from that to, I mean, look at where you are now.
right?
That is
Uh,
pretty insane.
it's a complete 180. That is, yeah, it took a lot of work. It didn't happen overnight. It was me deciding I wanna do these things. I have to deal with other human beings. Not all human beings are gonna hurt me, and in truth, they will. That was one thing that was the hardest lesson for me to learn, like, I can be open and accept people into my life, but I can't accept everyone into my life, and there was a reason I was guarded, and I realized that, having difficult childhood and all that, and there were abuse situations there, and then I grew up, and it's very easy when you're an abused kid to become an adult who allows those same patterns to occur because it's a sense of comfort and something you know, and hence why people who are abused once often get abused again, in one way or another. And so I had to like go, okay, let me reel myself back in and try again. And it's just, you know, what's the difference between somebody who tries something the first time and, isn't that great, but they do it versus somebody who's failed 1,000 times, but then does it, but then it's perfect. Like it's failure that makes, failure is what makes you stronger. And the only difference with somebody who didn't succeed and somebody who does succeed is just, well, I gave it one more go than that person did. They failed and stopped. I kept going.
And
So,
that's what trips a lot of people up, is they hit
yeah.
that first wall or they fall that first time and they just don't
Yeah.
get back up.
Right. Yeah. And it's sometimes it's a wise route or an easier route to be like, I'm going to give up, but I don't want to give up. This is it gives me some weird sense of satisfaction to be able to, even host a show and allow other people to have their voices. Because it's not just, that's why I like being the host. I get to offer up that space for others to talk. Because I talk a lot. I mean, I feel like I'm talking so much right now, but
Well, that's the whole point of the
that's the
show.
whole
Yeah,
point.
you're
Yeah,
in your
I was like,
element.
oh, okay. But I also, you know, one of the things about being a kind of a loner person, you get in your own head, and I have to work on letting other people talk. Though I know this is like, no, I'm supposed to talk here. Uh, which hosting is a great outlet for that. Here, it's your guys' show. I'm just here to guide the topic and make sure somebody doesn't take up the whole hour themselves.
Well, you're interesting in the sense that you seem like you were self-critical and constantly focused on improving yourself, which is a unique quality. There are a lot of people that don't. They can look at something that they produce and think that it's fine and never want to improve any aspect of it. They do it and it's perfect, and that's just how it's done. But in media especially, you have to constantly improve. You have to keep looking at your stuff and
Yeah,
honing your craft. And really in any aspect of life, if you want to get anywhere, just get better,
right.
you have to improve.
Yeah,
And you seem like you kind of have that innate quality of, okay, I can tweak this. Okay, I can move this next thing. Okay, I can do
right.
this a little differently.
There also has to come a point where, again, I'm a firm believer in good enough. Because if you sit there and fiddle with everything constantly and consistently, you don't produce anything. That was one thing I learned with art. I ended up like, I loved art, and I still do, and I still paint, but, like, nobody has seen my artwork, and I at a as a before I moved, I took all my artwork and just burned it, and, so this is, like, 12 years ago, and I just, like, burned it, and I was like, "Nobody needs to see this stuff," and I'm like, "You know what? I probably would have loved that stuff now as a person who's older and looking at my younger self, but I just thought it was like, it's junk, and I'll make either better things or just forget about it." I'm like, you can look back on those things and build upon them, but there does have to be a point where, uh especially with art courses I took. This is like just a throwback to school years. I haven't been in any classes for a long time, but what I think I failed one of my art courses because I just never turned anything in. I did all the work, and but I thought it was horrible, and I look back and I'm like, it wasn't bad. I think I found something in my mom's storage or something, like, when I was clearing it out, and I was like, "That was actually really good." Like, what was wrong with me? And you can be critical to a point, and I wouldn't say I'm a perfectionist, I'm a good enoughist. Is this good enough? Because something has to be produced. If you're at a job and you have a project that needs to be turned in, you can't keep asking for extensions. You have to turn something in. You have to produce something. And then that's kind of what media is in a way. It's you turn something in and then you get this feedback from listeners or from other people, producers or bosses if you have them, or even yourself down the line. But if you don't turn it in, you can't improve. You have to be like, this is good enough for now and I can become better later, but this can stand alone as is. Especially when you're talking. Like that's one and done. You can sit there and take out all the uhs and the breaths and things like that, but you gotta do something. Especially when I was doing live programming. That was like the radio's on, you go. If you mess up, you mess up. Which was probably really healthy for me because you can't take it back to the detriment of to my own detriment sometimes.
Well, you can definitely be too self-critical. I think having that ability to be introspective and take a step back and look at your work is important, but it does get to that point where it's too extreme, and then you
Yeah,
never really make any progress because 'cause you're never satisfied enough to move on to the next thing and get better. Like, you could be the next Picasso, and if you never painted anything anyone saw,
right,
what is it what does that really mean?
right. Yeah. What if we had never seen any of Picasso's works? Because he was like, "This is terrible."
And just
And
threw it away.
yeah, I mean, there you go. It's
It's just you don't wanna be on the opposite end as well, where you're never self-critical. It's that
no, yeah,
fine another fine line that you have to walk. And it gets kind of hard in a way when you have external people criticizing your work and critiquing
yeah,
it and trying to give you pointers, especially if they're not doing anything relative to what you're doing.
right,
Like, if you're a painter and you have someone who builds fences, and they're like, "I think you should have done this. You should have done this
right.
brush stroke this way." You're like,
Oh, that was one thing when I was a comedian that definitely still grates at me to this day that I would go up and do a set and maybe I wouldn't do everything perfect, but I'd be like, "Okay, I did better that time than I did the time before." And that's all you can ask for sometimes is it perfect? No. Did I do better? Did I was that joke funnier than it was before because I switched words around? You can the goal is not to be perfect. The goal is just get better. You'll never be perfect. Like perfection is an unattainable goal that everyone needs to wipe from their vocabulary. Because I mean, perfectly imperfect.
incremental progress is what you want.
Yes. Yeah. Um, I want it to just be I want progress quickly, but I'll take incremental because that's realistic and that's if something, and something could be worse, but as long as like you gotta find something good in what you've done. And sometimes it's I went up there. I bombed completely, but I went up there. And that's good because if I didn't go up there, I wouldn't have had that experience. I wouldn't have been able to work on anything at all. And curl up in a ball in my apartment. And so, but afterwards, just audience members. There's this perfect audience for comedy that laughs when they're supposed to laugh, and if they don't find it funny, okay, maybe, but they don't boo, they don't heckle, And then afterwards, if they liked what you did, they come up to you and they say that was really funny, good job. You know, here's $100. That's the perfect. I wish that would happen. And then there's the audience members that just want to tell you their own jokes. They want to tell you how to improve yourself. And that's when I go, here are the days for the open mics in the area. Or, there's open mics around here. You should try it out. And the I think the comedy group Like, it's amazing. If it's your first time going up to an open mic and everybody knows that, you're gonna get a round of applause. People are gonna cheer for you. You're gonna get the most amazing reception ever, and you're gonna walk off thinking you're the funniest person in the world. The second time you go up, it's gonna be crickets. Like, it's really hard to be funny. It's really hard to make a joke, though that critique of, "You should be doing this, you should be doing that, you should be doing this instead. Oh, why don't you do this?" It's like, "Well, because I have a show and I can only do so much. I have a set and I'm working on this thing. Like, thanks for your feedback, though. Like, here, you have the microphone."
And so you feel that people were more critical when you were doing comedy than
Oh,
during your
yeah.
time with media or with radio?
Uh, well, I mean, yeah. I think I also by the time I got on radio, I had already stand-up comedy is the hardest medium of artistry, I think, out there, and no discredit to any other style of performance. I've done a few different types. In stand-up comedy, it's you and your words and an audience, and your goal is to make them laugh, and I I'm humorous. I wouldn't necessarily say that I'm ha-ha, immediately laugh out loud funny. The biggest critique I always got was, "You really made people think." I'm like, "Okay, well, me and George Carlin are both ENTPs, so I'll take that as a, cool, I made people think, but yeah, I make them laugh." And that's the goal. Like, you wanna make them laugh. You don't want them to go, "Hmm, I'm gonna go home and ponder, like, the en every aspect of life." Like, no, you want them to just laugh and let them release their pressures of their day, and it's difficult. It's really tough to do that, and it really prepared me, though, for public speaking. Like, I went into comedy in order to become really, really good and get over my fear because even though I had, conquered the collegiate level of public speaking, I still would slip back into that "I'm not good enough, I can't talk, I'm scared of everyone" thing, and stand-up comedy just it's you and a microphone, and you're talking to people, and they either like you or they hate you or whatever, but the criticism from stand-up comedy is unlike anything unlike anything else. People really feel like they can just go up to you and be like, "You were terrible. You ruined my night. I can't believe they let you like, your mom had you. You need to tell your mom to take you back wherever you came from." Like, people are just, like, so harsh sometimes, and, when you're funny, they're like, "Oh my gosh, you're amazing. Let me tell you some of my jokes." And it's like, "Okay." You know? Uh, so that definitely prepared me for a lot of criticism. And I think corporate radio prepared me in another way, which I have to when it's stand up, you have to make the audience laugh. When you're in corporate radio, you have to make your boss happy and you have to make money. If you're not appeasing the sponsors, you're not doing your job. Because you have to get the listenership, you have to have all of that. You have to have a cohesive show, for 3-4 hours a day, sometimes longer depending on which station you're working for. And you have to make it sound good. You gotta do the right moves and say the right things, and the harshest critiques are gonna come from the corporate overlords, as I like to call them. But the real critique is how much money are you bringing in, which is not my favorite thing, but I worked in sales advertising before then, and so I definitely understood it, and I totally get where that is. Though when you're bringing in money and when you're making money, you're still getting critiques. It's like corporate media is very harsh. It is very critical. Whether you're in sales or behind the microphone, you're never good enough. You're never bringing in enough money. You can do better. There's no point of, "Gee, you did a great job." And maybe that's different. I've had thoughts of going back into corporate radio because I do miss that aspect. I love music. I love being able to connect to people. I don't know if it's good for my mental health especially, and I think Like, I know I'm strong enough, though at the same time, you have people telling you, like, you're terrible. Like, you on one side, you're like, "But the listeners are happy, the sponsors are happy. Why am I not good enough for," and it's like, you just have to remember, like, what all those critiques from the corporate overlords are not who you are, and they're not it's almost like it's not real, but you have to take it seriously because they're your bosses, and they're the ones who are cutting your paycheck, and, they're the ones signing their name on that paycheck, and no matter how little the paycheck is, and so you have to appease them, but to appease everyone is a difficult task.
I don't think I could do that corporate world, especially where your speech isn't necessarily your speech 100% of the time.
Right. I mean, yeah. I did I mean, I tried my best to make a rule that I don't want a sponsorship from a company I don't believe in. I'm not gonna tell somebody to use something if I'm not gonna use it, which, worked out well locally because it's mostly, like, I mean, you know, I can only think of maybe, like, 2 companies in the entire area I'd be like, "Psh, I don't want your money." And one of them went out of business, so who cares? Um, so it's kind of, you know, I mean, you gotta say what you gotta say, especially I mean, the good news is I love food. I'm not sitting there like, "Oh, yeah, you should go eat the pizza at this place," and, like, being like, "Oh, that pizza's terrible." No, the pizza's great. Like, it's really easy to talk that up, if you're talking about the commercial aspect. Though I do wish I could have focused a little less on, just top of the pop style radio talk. I enjoyed it too, I actually do. It was like, "Oh, I get to sit here." Part of my research was, reading delisted and Perez Hilton sort of web pages and being like, "What's going on?" Let me find out the scoop on Rihanna right now, and, like, the recent Super Bowl, that would have been definitely an entire, like, segment about, like, Rihanna and her whole thing, and I do kind of miss that, though if you're not the sort of person that likes talking about pop culture, then no, you probably hate it, and you'd probably hate having to do certain commercials and interrupting songs, because that's one thing that everybody's like, "I just wanna listen to the music or some funny stuff," or things like that, and then it'd be like in between songs, you'd have to be like, "And now time for, a commercial break of me talking about some random internet thing that you should go buy and sign up for now." It's it's part of the job.
Have you thought about building out something like that online? Maybe
Well,
with Access Humboldt or on
so
your own
Access
or
Humboldt's a nonprofit. With a nonprofit radio station, we have underwriters. Like my show has an underwriter. It's very inexpensive to underwrite, but with that, you can't promote any. So it's non-commercial.
No, I don't mean with the commercials, I meant do your own kind of tabloid stuff where you look at
Oh
maybe pop
yeah.
culture
Oh,
elements that you are interested in.
well, it's a local. It's all local. So I definitely have brought up, like, can can we do something like that? And they're like, no, because we're talking about a local situation with people who aren't necessarily considered public figures. When it comes to public figures, you're allowed to speculate and discuss things in a different way. Whereas if I started talking about so and so's relationship with so and how they might actually be seeing so and so on the side with a population of less than 100,000, or no, it's 130,000. So, I'm trying to remember what our current population is. I think it fluctuated over whatever. Uh, it's a little different there because it's a small town, and I don't think it would be appropriate.
What about not necessarily tailoring it that way, but doing national tabloid stuff for the local audience? It's like you're still doing, I don't know, you're covering the Super Bowl or you're covering Meghan Markle and what's Harry? What's his name?
Prince Harry,
Prince Harry? Yeah.
Prince
You're
Hotginge,
you're
yeah.
covering that, but it's not, it's just like your own thing. Not necessarily that you have to cover local tabloid stuff of who's dating who or what's the lowdown.
Right. There's already that. It's called the Lost Coast Outpost. No, no, there's not. That's one thing that they don't touch. I don't know if would there be an interest in that because I feel like that's what like you can tune into the former radio stations that I worked for and get that still with a very different perspective. The DJ that took my place is actually produced his show before, but he has a very, very, very different style than me. And that was one thing I'd have people hitting me up and be like, "We miss you," and da da da. I was like, "Give him a chance because it's different than me." That's all. Like you liked me, and I get that. I'm a very specific style of DJ. Uh, I definitely bring up topics that are outside of that realm, while he's very mainstream commercial. That's what he does. He's been doing it for a long time, and he's really good at it. Uh, So people who would, like, message me and be like, "We miss you, like, down with that guy." I'd be like, "No, no, 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 no." Like, he's great at what he does. He's doing a great job, and you might not like that style, but other people will. You know, for every one fan he lost because they lost it because I left, somebody else is gonna come on because there's something for everyone out there.
But maybe that's a sign that there would be a market for you to do that, if
Maybe.
you're interested.
Yeah. No, definitely. Like, you mean like a podcast or something like
Yeah, a
local
podcast
Humboldt
or
trash
there's
talking podcast. Humboldt Trash!
Humboldt Trash. That would be a good name, actually.
Yeah.
No, but there's
There you go. We've got a podcast,
Humboldt Trash.
Humboldt Trash.
Humboldt Trash. Do you know who Miles Cochran is?
I don't.
He does Humboldt Last Week.
Yes. Okay, I do
Yeah.
know Miles.
Shout out to MCMC. He's awesome. But he does he has a online radio station and then does Humboldt Last Week. I think it's the same name, Humboldt Last Week Radio online too. But he kind of
Yeah.
built out his own
It shows
little online.
they played on Lost Coast Outpost, I
Oh,
believe.
do they?
I think so. I think that's where I found out about it. Mm.
But I think there's a market just for internet stuff in general because you have a little more freedom. You could talk about what you want to talk about,
Right.
go into whatever depth you want, and there's no corporate overlords saying no,
No
you need to.
corporate overlords, right? I think it'd be fun. I'm afraid of being being a John Shiv or something where I don't know who that person is.
That's so funny. You don't know who that is, and you just threw him out there.
Well, no, he has like a blog in the
Oh,
area. Yeah, I just came up with a random
it's like
name.
John Shiv.
Yeah, let me give him some promotion here because well, his website can seem slightly slanderous at times, and I don't want to come across as that. I do definitely I think there should be more of a entertainment scope somewhere. I mean, the closest that you get is, Bob Doran he's on Humboldt Hot Air now, and he has his podcast about what's going on. I feel like a lot of what people are doing could be very dry, though. I definitely want to infuse some opinion in there, and uh, yeah, I'd have way too much fun with it, and I'm afraid that I might go overboard because I want to know who everyone's dating. I do. Oh, got to come up with some name like the what do they call it? Like the Yenta next door or something? The one that just always is paying attention to everything you're doing, to everything going on in the neighborhood. What do they call it? Neighborhood watch, but extremist. Yeah. The Trash Watch. Humboldt Trash Watch.
Humboldt Trash Watch. So
Yeah.
you really do
I really do
you're a
love
fan
it.
of the tabloid stuff.
I am. I am. I want to like why doesn't Humboldt have a Bat Boy? We've had Bigfoot forever. Like somebody's had to have a kid with him.
Bigfoot, the
We need to create like a Humboldt Inquirer, like the National Enquirer. Just the most ridiculous stuff.
you could do that.
I could do that.
You could do
You
that.
could do anything with the magic of the internet.
Do you have the
Definitely.
same kind of corporate overlordness at Access Humboldt? I would imagine definitely not to the same extreme, but do you have
Well, I am the complaint department.
Oh, well, that's helpful.
So it's, well,
Complain away.
I'm the what do they call it? The head of uh programming or not head of programming. That sounds really fancy. It's all volunteer work, by the way. Everything on Access Humboldt is volunteer work, not Matt. Matt deserves to be paid, but he's there morning, noon, night answering everything. I'm on the board. And on the board, one of the subcommittees is programming. And somehow I became the person for that, which means, what programming is not just, it's defining what is okay and what is not okay to go on air as well. If there is a complaint, I get to deal with that. So, like, it's who are you gonna complain to?
Yeah.
Me? It's yeah, fair, fair.
Do you ever worry about getting too controversial with a topic on your show? And
On Thursday Night Talks, I mean, we've covered everything from abortion rights to, uh, we've talked about Rex Bone. We've talked about can't get any more controversial than Rex Bone right now. W He's a sweet guy too in person. It's kinda so weird. It's so weird being like, "Oh, there's this" for everyone in Humboldt, because you have to realize there's a public identity and then there's a private identity for every single person, and what people think of a person one way could be completely different than them behind the scenes, or not, or people are just terrible monsters. I haven't figured it out yet completely, though as for controversy, I mean, no. I think every single topic out there can be handled in an appropriate manner. It would be absolutely controversial for me to host a show specifically aimed at talking about all the trash talk going on in Humble and giving, I almost feel like that would be giving a little bit of a bump for the ability for people to bully in some way. It'd almost be like a Gossip Girl style thing, and I think that's stupid. It was an idea I had that gets trashed constantly, so because it's Humboldt Trash. Uh, though for Thursday Night Talk, I don't feel like there's any topic that would be there are topics where you can tell everybody is kinda dancing around it because everybody feels so uncomfortable. Uh, Feel free to go and watch all the shows on YouTube, on the Access Humboldt YouTube page, and you can tell sometimes where people are like, "Well," that's there's one person I love having on the show, and that's, Jennifer Fumiko Cahill. She's part of the North Coast Journal, and she is whenever there's something where I'm like, "I don't know how to talk about this," I go, "Jennifer, what do you think?" And she'll just or if there's something that everybody wants to say, I know she'll say it. So I always love when she's on the show. She's only been on a couple times, but it's just, um, am I afraid of saying something controversial? Yes, because it's a small community and you don't wanna anger the wrong people.
so you're not so worried about oversight fear. It's more public backlash or having to see somebody in the community after maybe you said something
It's,
a little dicey.
uh it's hard out here in the wood. I think a lot of people don't realize exactly how far people will go to retaliate. Like, there are people that will slash your tires. There are people that will absolutely, deface your home. They'll come into where you work. They'll really actually go after you. So that's, yeah.
Have you experienced that?
I have Yeah, I mean, yeah. Not for anything I've said on air, but because people don't like me. Sometimes actually, no, it is for things that I have said. Some people have not necessarily even about them, though I've also had, like, the stalker thing, and yeah. That's that's one thing I'll never not say. Men don't like being rejected. Come after it. Like, I don't know what else to say about that one. That's just some men just can't take rejection, and that's sad for them, but it's also scary for me. And well, that was like, like with the abortion conversation. I was like, I'm here to host, you guys talk because it can be terrifying. I don't want somebody blaming pitchforks and things like that. Weird. There's people who speak in snake tongues out here. And they think that's normal, and they think, like, what I would consider child abuse extremely is what they consider normal. So I don't wanna anger them. I do kinda wanna anger them, and I want them to come out of the woodworks, but I also don't wanna anger them.
I do not know what snake talk is.
Snake tongue.
Snake tongue.
They speak in snake tongue, like, they literally talk to snakes, and they have, like, epiphanies with God. where they start speaking as though they're a snake and
So there are
and
some crazy people that you're
yeah,
afraid would come after you
religious
for things that you
extremists,
say.
incels. Yeah. Yeah, they can be terrifying. Religious extremists and incels. These are the two most terrifying groups anywhere. Absolutely anywhere.
Is this a fear attached to you being a public figure or just a fear in general?
Oh, even before I was a public figure out here, I had stalkers and weirdos and people. Like, I had a guy who actually thought that we were in a relationship for 2 years. His whole family thought we were in a relationship for 2 years. I didn't know we were in a relationship. I had no idea. And he ended up trying to like, he put a guy I was dating in the hospital because that guy was stealing his girl. So, yeah, there are people with mental illnesses that are unchecked, and I have every right to be scared. I have absolutely every right to be terrified. I'd like to think that as I get older and less like, less aesthetically pleasing to creepy men, because creepy men always like young women, it's a thing, like, you know, mature men appreciate women their age, because you'd want somebody with similar interests, similar life, and I think people are beautiful of all ages, so it's, like, age is just a number, sort of, but not when you're talking about young kids, like, then age is definitely a number that matters, though I'm hoping that as I get older, maybe I'll get less of those strange men, but from what I've heard from women, it doesn't really end until, you know, you're, like, 60, 70, and even then, you still get weirdos sometimes, so there's that, yeah. So even before I was a public figure, it was strange. It was strange. Yeah. I've had scenarios and situations and weird obsessions and I have no idea why. You know, people just get fixated on a person and sometimes that's me. Which means that hey, I should be in media, right? It's, there's nothing safer than putting yourself way, way, way out there in a public space. It's not true,
Well, I think
but
that speaks
kind
to
of.
maybe your character in a sense that you won't or wouldn't let that hold you back. Because I think that would be reason for some people. Some people, it's
Yeah.
just the aspect of fear that can be paralyzing.
No, I've definitely been scared from I don't wanna talk about it because 'cause it'll just put me in a headspace. The situations have happened where I definitely retreated a lot, um, more socially than work-wise. That's the cool thing about media being my job is I'm forced to go and do things. It's probably why I keep, uh, having social jobs like service industry and things like that. It forces me to face that, to not get comfortable, hiding away or get comfortable in fear or anything. It's like you have to go out there and just be out there.
Do you feel more guarded with your speech on top of that aspect, the fear aspect, but just also the idea that what you say is now out there forever? And that, yeah, you might agree with this idea in this moment, but 5 years down the road, are you still gonna look back and feel the same? Do you think about that aspect of it at all?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, who doesn't?
That's what gets me, is I think not that I let it stop me or interfere with what I'm gonna say in the moment, but it's just something you recognize that this is now out there.
Right.
For better or worse, it's out there.
I think I had to come to terms with that a while ago and just
Accept it.
accept it. And I know I have said things where I'm like, ooh, oh, so dumb. It's just like the dumbest thing possible. And, if you get called out for it, you learn. Uh, I mean, that's one thing about like the call out culture that people who get called out don't seem to understand. And every now and then you see it where somebody goes, "Oh my gosh, yeah." Like I can't even apologize for that. That was terrible of me to say when I was 19. I said something horrible. I got swept up in what I was saying and the culture and thinking that it was funny and it absolutely was. Like that's what you were supposed to learned from that is don't say that, and, like, there's no real apology you can give for it, because if you hurt someone, you can apologize all you want. It's up to them to, like, they're still hurt. And so it's there's definitely things where I'd like, if I could rewind and be like, "Man, I should have been able to handle that a little better." Definitely, definitely. And is there a fear of it? Absolutely, yeah, yeah. Especially with, Thursday night talks, it's my face and my name, and I'm not, I'm not hiding behind a pseudonym, or, there's no lawyer bot behind me going beep beep boop, we'll protect you. It's just me doing my thing, and got to be careful, because, well, and I don't want to hurt people. Like, the whole point of this is to not hurt people. And I can definitely be in a negative mindset. I can be in a weird mindset. I can, anxious mindset where I say things and I'm like, oh no, that wasn't me being my kindest self. And I want people to not feel bad. So if I say, something horrible where people go, wow, ouch, somehow that hurt me, or, and I would own it and be like, "Oh, no," whether I recognize it or not. If somebody, calls me out for something, like, please do, because it's a learning lesson. Though I also definitely fear, what if something I say now suddenly does become, there were words that I used as a kid that weren't considered bad words. They were considered what you called things, especially, I mean, obviously, there's still, like LGBTQ crew, like, there's obviously words that have always been terrible, to use, but then there were words that where that's just what you called somebody who presented this way or did this, which is now considered horrendously awful, because the meaning switched because people started using it to bully people. And it's like, oh, so if there was a recording of me from, when I was 18 or something, like, that would have been the vernacular that everybody used. But if you look at an 18-year-old now and they heard me say that, a recording of me saying that back then, they'd be like, "You're terrible and we need to cancel you." And it's like, I understand that that word is terrible now. It was not back then. And I'm not talking about the F word or things like those, have always been terrible. Those have always been terrible and never okay to say. Um, though language changes. Language does change, and so that is something that I'm concerned with, especially, I like reading the word of the day from, well, I get like 3, like, emails from, like, different words of the day. I like learning new words and trying to include them, and I enjoy reading a lot, and so, but even, you can look back on, like, Tolstoy or C.S. Lewis and look at some of the language used back then, you'd be like, "Wow, you wouldn't be able to say that today." Though back then, in the context of, that's what people talk about, the context of the times, in that, well, okay, I wanna use an example, and I also don't, because it's scary to use an example. In Rocky Horror Picture Show, there's a song called "Sweet Transsexual." And the word transsexual back in the day was a word, and there was a term you'd use, which was tranny, and that was not offensive. People would call themselves that if they were transsexual. It was a very common word. If you use that word now, you can't use that word. And I'm sorry if me saying that word did hurt anybody. I don't want that to happen. Though it's in the movie. Like, it's in the Rocky Horror, it's in the play, and so back in the '70s and '80s and '90s, that was a word that you would use, and nobody would be offended by it. And now you cannot use that word. Not the full, you can say transsexual, but you can't say the shortened version, I believe. I'm not fully aware of this, and this is why I don't like, I'm like, somebody educate me." And I wouldn't, if I had a show about that, which I did have a show about the issue in Ferndale with, the drag community, or, against, I mean, not against, but it's more the church community against the drag community. And that was one where I was like, I'm letting everybody speak. Like, I want you all to speak more than I do, because I am not the one educated on this. I'm not the one living this. And that's, so yes, in short, yes, sometimes I'm terrified, because what if something I say today is horribly offensive in 20 years? and somebody points back to it. When I'm in my big old career and I've written, some fantastic play or something, and I've got 2 Tonys because now I'm a musical writer. I would never be, but let's say I won 2 Tonys and an Oscar because why not? And somebody goes back to this podcast and they're like, "She said that word," and it's like, well, did you listen to the context of it? I'm talking about how it's, I mean, there's certain words you don't say. There's certain things you don't talk about.
Yeah, but people, especially nowadays, struggle with the idea of context and struggle with the idea that society changes and
Yeah,
things that are acceptable go in and out of flow. And I mean, that's the steady beat of progress.
yeah,
And if you look, I mean, everybody is a villain if you give it enough time and you look
right,
back. I mean,
yeah.
that's just the reality.
You either
Like,
die a hero or grow old enough to see yourself become the villain.
exactly.
Yeah,
And I'm sure that's just part of it. And if we try to hold people from the past to the standards of the present, nobody's gonna match up to that.
yeah.
It just doesn't work that way. 'Cause culture changes. I do kind of like it in a way. I'll be honest. I like the idea. Yeah, there's that fear aspect of, oh man, it's in 20 years, am I still gonna look back fondly on what was said? But I like
Right.
the idea that these are moments in time. That
Yeah,
this is you in this moment, and this is
yeah.
me in this moment. And this is how I feel, and yeah, hopefully it'll track growth as I move forward, but it's also this is who I was at 25. This was me in this moment on the 21st of February at whatever time.
Right.
This was us. This was our moment,
Here we
and
are.
it's entombed in time. So you can't take it out of context because here's the context. This is us. I do like that aspect. Even though it kind of freaks me out, I
Right.
do like it.
Magical realm of now. And there it goes. That's yeah.
And it's fleeting.
It's fleeting. It's so fleeting. Oh, yeah,
That's all part of media. That's all part of doing stuff online.
it
Is it's
is.
out there and time will move forward, but it will always be
You
what it
can't take
is.
it back. I actually was talking to somebody recently about because I didn't grow up with the same level of media interface that kids today are. I, my school was I was like the first kindergarten class to be introduced to the computer thing. And I had a computer at home at that point, but that's cuz my dad big computer nerd and he worked whatever. And we didn't have social media like it is now when I was growing up. We had AOL. We had fake names. I was always told never give your real name to somebody on the internet. Never show people pictures of yourself, never share personal information. And all of a sudden it's like, "Oh, you're 5? Here, you can have your own series on TikTok." And that's insane to me because all of those horrible things that I yeah, well, not horrible, but all the stupid things I did when I was a kid, kids are still doing them. They're
And now
now
they're documented.
now they're documented. I almost feel like there should be a law that when you're, like, 18 or 21, you can delete everything or that, like, anything you know, if a kid gets in trouble, unless it's a what is the rule? Heinous crime, they are tried as a kid and they have their records expunged at 18. So it's like a whole new slate, and I almost feel like that should be a thing for media personas. Like, if when you hit 18, you wanna click a delete button, I feel like you should be able to because I was 14. I was dumb.
Well, maybe that speaks to the idea that kids shouldn't have access or maybe unfettered access to social
I
media
think
platforms.
they would be held behind from their peers
Is that
if
real though?
I
Though, I mean,
think
if you're
so.
seeing your friends at school, it would just be like going back to the 80s or the 90s before it. You're still hanging out with your friends. You could still text them.
Yeah.
It's just, do you need Instagram? Do you need Instagram at 14? Like what?
No.
Yeah, right?
I
Do you
would
need Twitter at 12? What are you tweeting
Nobody
that's
needs Twitter. Twitter needs to go away now. Like, Twitter
You're
is
not a fan of Twitter.
I hate Twitter. Well, and now Musk has his hands on it, and it's just go away.
Oh, you're not a Musk guy. Gal.
I was like,
I use
um,
guy interchangeably. I just throw
well,
around guy.
at first I thought, "Oh, this is super cool." Back when he was like, "Yeah, we're gonna release Tesla, we got SpaceX," and Elon Musk didn't come up with any of this. He just funded it. He just played some good moves, and I mean, he didn't even program PayPal because it was PayPal that he originally had. He didn't do any of the programming or coding for that.
Are you sure about that? I'm pretty sure he
Di
built
Was he the one?
I'm pretty sure him and his brother built
Okay,
I don't know if it was PayPal. I don't think it was called PayPal. It was like a peer-to-peer thing, and I think it was bought out,
by PayPal.
maybe, yeah. But I'm pretty sure he built that.
Did he?
I know
Okay.
he didn't found Tesla, but he
No.
definitely saved it. I mean, it was
Well, from financial ruin and
well, even
yeah,
just from a engineering aspect, I mean, they had to rebuild it
yes.
from the ground up. They couldn't use anything. I think they reused maybe like a basic component like the steering wheel or something crazy like that,
Oh,
but it was the chassis, they had to redesign everything, I believe.
yeah. So again, in the beginning, Tesla was cool, and now he is a figurehead for he's just a figurehead. He's a CEO. He doesn't have his hands deep in there. He's not the one coding anything for Tesla at this point. He's not the one coding anything for SpaceX. He's just in charge. He's a boss man. And again, like grown to be the villain. And it's not good. It's not a good look.
Why do you say that he's grown to be the villain?
He was always the villain. He was kind of born to be a villain. Because, well, look at Tesla. Look what happened. Look how cool of an idea it is to have electric vehicles. Now it's a pay to play program. It's a money grab. You should not have to, like, if you buy a car outright, you should be able to drive that car. You shouldn't have to pay a monthly service fee in order to get all the perks of it. And you shouldn't have to pay more for every little perk. Like, that car should just come with everything.
Isn't that just for the self-driving software?
Not just for the
It's
self-driving
not.
software, it's also for I think they tried to do oh, like, if you wanted to use the last quarter of your tank, to fill it full, uh, at the Tesla stations, you would have to pay, like, a monthly fee in order to unlock that feature. And it's full of features, and it's essentially planned obsolescence too. Because 'cause let's face it, once that happens, they're gonna start being like, "Oh, this next one like, the parts aren't gonna fit, you're not gonna and you can't. You literally you cannot work on your own Tesla. You have to take it to a Tesla spot and have them work on it for you, which is just
Well,
I don't
that's
like
just
that.
cars in general.
That's not true. You can
You
take,
modern cars?
I don't have a modern car. Oh, I don't
But
have
I'm are you good with your hands with cars?
no.
Oh, so you and I aren't fixing our cars, period.
No, but I'm still gonna take it to whatever mechanic I want.
Oh, yeah, there is that, right? You have to go to a certified
Yeah, I'm not
Tesla
gonna
person, but you can't just I mean, I'm speaking for myself. If I pop the hood on a 2023 whatever, it's a spaceship. I don't know what's going on down
well
there. It doesn't matter if it's a Tesla or a Ford.
well,
It's
yeah, everything's well, all the electrical components now, that's for sure.
yeah.
Well, that's I have a hybrid, so it's
Yeah.
it's this isn't like an old jalopy from, 1920s or when was it, 1940s? When was the Dust Bowl?
That is a good question.
Yeah,
Ford? I don't know.
yeah,
Yeah. But
anyway.
what about the free speech aspect of Twitter with Musk? You don't
But
buy
he's
into that?
not doing a free speech aspect, he is creating an algorithm so that he comes on top. What was it? It was, Biden's somehow Biden something Biden said came was more popular and being seen and liked by more people than Musk's latest. And so Musk went to his brother and said, "We got to reprogram this." And I think it's Musk's brother who is the real smart one for coding, for coding purposes here. And I think Musk is just the Edison involved. So his brother's the actual Tesla, and yeah. And he's censoring people. He's pushing people, what do you call it? Ghost what's that word? shadow
Shadow banning?
he's pretty much shadow banning certain people. He's not allowing certain people to even have
Do you have any specific examples of that?
of him shadow banning.
Yeah, or any names?
Now I'm just looking at the logarithms and seeing people complain about it.
I don't
Uh,
know if that's necessarily true from what I've been reading. It seems like a lot of people have been unshadow banned and brought back under
like
him.
Trump or
Trump, well,
was
have
he?
you been following the Twitter files?
No.
That would be something to look into.
Uh,
I need to dig into it more, but
okay.
it's I mean, the previous Twitter was I would buy the argument for that because there's documentation of them pulling anybody and everybody for various
Yeah.
reasons, some legitimate, most not, just blanket censorship,
Yeah.
predominantly towards right-wing people, but again, just across the board. And it seems like he has done a lot to reverse those decisions. It's just my
I
understanding.
also feel like censorship can be a good thing.
That scares me. That
Yeah.
idea scares me.
I don't think you should be able to say, like kill all I'm quarter Jewish. You shouldn't be able to say kill all the Jews. You should not be able to incite violence. Uh go to 4chan. Does Trump not realize 4chan exists? Hey Trump, go to 4chan. But no, he needs a recognition that it's him is his issue. That's an ego thing for Trump, but that's a whole different topic. I I don't think it's social media. If you want to create your own website or blog, which there's a billion different ones you can do for free, go write that there. I don't think it should be on a social media platform. I actually appreciate, on YouTube, you can say things, but you're going to be demonetized if you
Well,
say
I've had
them.
videos pulled off YouTube.
Oh, have you
Oh
really?
yeah. That's why I'm
Wait, for what?
free speech stuff is
Oh,
what I would consider it, but they felt
yeah.
differently.
Oh, I'm so curious.
They well,
Don't get this
yeah,
pulled.
right?
Yeah.
But my problem with censorship just in broad strokes is the idea that if we go down that path, which you could make an argument we should
Mhm.
to some regard, the point at which we stop and what gets censored has to be a decision made by somebody. And do we trust the person to make that decision? Because what if we agree with it today and then tomorrow it's used against us? Or tomorrow they push the line a little bit further, or they do this or they do that.
All
Once
right.
you start implementing lines, it's just, it can devolve so quickly.
I mean, that's almost a fallacy, though. Like, it's.
You should look at the Twitter files.
I should.
You
I
should check out
should.
the Twitter files because the censorship, I mean, you had the DOD, you had the
Mhm.
CIA, you had the FBI, you had senators reaching out to Twitter to get people pulled for things as simple as commenting on immigration.
Oh,
Censorship,
really?
yeah,
Oh,
censorship
okay.
can get very
Iffy.
uncomfortable
Yeah.
very fast, or at least for me, because I mean, I'm trying to talk, and the idea that you get that speech
I'm
limited
so
in some
curious
scope
why you
is
got your videos pulled.
well, one YouTube, I have the love hate. So far, the only platform that has been fairly good, and I will sing their praises, is Facebook. Believe it or not, I've
Interesting.
had videos pulled on TikTok. I've had videos pulled on YouTube.
Do they tell you why?
I mean, TikTok's the worst one.
Oh, TikTok is so heavily
TikTok is
regulated.
so
You
heavy-handed,
can't
so
say
heavy-handed,
unalive. Yeah, you have to say certain words, otherwise, just
ridiculous.
mascara. Like, what is that? That's the weirdest one for me. I'm like, ew. No, I can't. I was like,
But does that
I can't
scare
even
you?
use mascara. Why is that not sacred? Why is my makeup not sacred anymore?
But does that scare you in a sense where you do this public thing and you're putting it out into the world, and so the idea that that could be limited in scope, does that weigh on you at all?
Uh,
Or not necessarily? I guess not necessarily because 'cause you're not really going super controversial, would you say?
I'm not really that controversial of a person. But, I mean, I have controversial views. I don't know. I mean, do I though? I think I'm fairly moderate, and I'm I try to focus heavily on logic. And even when I disagree with people, I go, okay, well, why do they think what they think? What is their background? Let me figure out where they come from and how they could believe in something that I see as don't tell me you're a flat earther because I think, "Oh my gosh, what how?" And I have to go, "Okay, what mental illness does this person have?" or something. And I mean, not just kidding, flat earthers. I don't know. Sure, you have a huge audience of flat earthers listening right now. Though I guess I'm just not that controversial. I can be, especially because I mean, I consider myself a feminist. I'm also a traditionalist in a lot of ways. So it's this I can I can piss off both sides really easily. I consider myself more on the left wing of things, but moderate and try heavily science-based background, just, you know, like if you were like say something controversial, I'd be like, "Oh, I don't know. A lot is not one word. Fight me on it."
Great, now we're gonna get pulled off YouTube.
Right? Axe body spray is terrible. How about that one?
I don't know if that's controversial anymore.
It's still see men using I smell men using it. Grown men using Axe body spray. That's a problem for me. Problem. That's where my controversies go though. That's my point. I'm like, well, I guess I'm a corporate entity's dream right here, I guess. I just want to
Well,
please
it's not
everyone.
bad to not be controversial. I don't think that's, like, a knock on you or
Yeah.
anything.
I guess I don't know. Everyone's controversial to somebody in some way. So do I care about censorship? Yes. Does it bother me that I mean, TikTok has its own rules. Twitter has its own rules. Facebook has its own rules. YouTube has its own rules. And then there's 4chan. Like why there's other places on the internet that you can go and be if you want to reach other people, like you got to find other ways if you want to talk about certain things in certain ways. Because I feel like any topic is open for discussion except for Tiananmen Square.
Well, in China.
There's yeah, it's like, but if you try to put this on TikTok now, well, yeah, you would not. It wouldn't go now because I said that. You're not even allowed to say the name of that. So I think things should be spoken about. Okay, I don't want censorship to that level. I want us to be able to talk about the Ohio train derailment. I want to be able to talk about 9/11,
You want a cultivated censorship.
a cultivated censorship. I do think that it can be fair to have words that shouldn't be said if there's an audience. TikTok is a bunch of kids.
Is it though? I feel like it's just everybody now.
It's everybody for sure, but it's the newest one for kids, and now they're switching over. The kids are figuring out like, "Oh, no, we can't be like the adults," so they're switching to something else, and I can't remember what it is, but I'm sure it'll be all over soon if it becomes popular. Um, it's like Snapchat. I don't think kids should have Snapchat. I think that should be 100 like, you have to be 18 plus to have Snapchat, um, or have full parental controls access, and parents get every photo sent. Like, I don't know. I just think if I had a kid in this world, like, that's probably one of the many reasons I don't have a kid. One of the many, many, many reasons I do not have a kid is I just don't know how I would be able to handle this world with them being part of the social aspects that comes with being in this modern world while also protecting them. And so, I mean, Club Penguin was really censored too. You couldn't say anything on there. and and that's where parents let their kids go and chat with everybody. And maybe there needs to be something specifically like Kid Talk that's just for kids, where everything is censored and wonderful and the world isn't a hard place. Because the world should be small and censored for kids. It really should be. And I should also be able to go on a social media site and not have to look at things I don't want to look at. I don't want to look at dead animals, unless it's a steak. That I watch a lot of cooking shows. That's totally different and not what I'm talking about. I wanna be able to go and not see little kids, if that makes sense. Like, I don't wanna like, things should be censored and banned, and the FBI should be watching. Like, I really think FBI and CIA should absolutely be watching social media and be on the lookout for all the weirdos that are out there, but we should also be able to talk about, yeah, curated, cultivated. Is that what you call it? Cultivated censorship. Yeah.
That scares me. That's the idea of censorship just because I don't trust anyone to make that call. And especially when it regards to ideas. I think if you're an adult, you should be able to handle ideas you disagree with. And when we start
But as an adult, if there wasn't the sense, I don't need to see naked people. I
well,
don't need to see weird
that all
things,
stems from you could block accounts or you could not
but I don't wanna
follow
see
those
it to
type of
begin
accounts.
with.
But what if someone says, "I don't wanna see Talvi Freed's Thursday Night Talk"? Should they ban you from the platform or should they just not follow you?
They can just not follow me. But there's only go see that on, or I guess OnlyFans is now banning nudity or something?
I think that was
A joke?
maybe, or
Uh,
they were considering it at one point and then they backed
that's
down. I
yeah,
think
that
that was a
was
while ago. Yeah, poor
their
business move.
entire model is based off of that. Like, isn't that what that's
Good way to
for?
implode a business.
Yeah, right? Which is funny because Instagram used to allow nude people on there.
I think Twitter does. I think Twitter does.
Yeah. Well, I don't wanna see anybody naked without me being like, "Hey, get naked." So, that's
Fair.
yeah.
That's fair.
That's and no, I don't follow my algorithm is very much, cats and food. Not in the same sometimes it is cats eating. Like, will this cat eat a carrot? Pretty cute. It's that's what I get on my feeds, and it's which is always hilarious too, which this is just totally an sort of off topic thing, but when I talk to people and they're like, TikTok is nothing but young girls jumping on trampolines, like half naked. And I'm like, oh, is it? So what are you looking up on when you're on TikTok? Because that doesn't show up for me. So yeah, that says a lot more about the person. I love the algorithm. I do have to say the algorithm's gotten so smart. And that's also another scary aspect though. Why is it so smart? Why does it know so much about me that it knows that this random person I've never seen before that only has 12 videos has posted, a channel where they cook outdoors with their friendly parrot. Like, why does this know that that is perfect for me? There's a lot of scary things out there,
We are
censorship.
living in a weird time.
Yeah.
We're living in a very weird time.
Watch now because my phone, everything's listening. So my phone later is going to be
Oh,
like,
you're gonna be getting ads.
I found a show for you where somebody just goes outdoors and cooks and with their parrot. I'm going to be like, wow, it has to exist.
Everything exists now on the internet.
Yeah.
It's all out there.
Except for Humboldt Trash.
Well,
That's
it might. It might pretty quick.
Yeah.
Tell me, this was awesome. I really appreciate you coming on and talking with me.
You're welcome. I'm glad to have been here.
Do you want to plug where people can find you, where they can find your show, all your stuff?
Sure. Talvi Freed. Find me on Facebook, I guess is an easy way. I'm on Instagram, Lumiporo, Lumiporo. Thursday Night Talks you can find on the Access Humboldt channel. You can always, if you have any questions, comments, things like that, if you don't want to message me on Facebook or Instagram, you can message my producer. That would be KRFH at accesshumboldt.net, or yeah, that'll work. I should get my own. I should get like TNT at
TNT.com.
TNT. No, the Democratic Party owns Talvi.com or TalviFree.com. Thanks, Democratic Party.
Ruining it.
Ruin it for everyone.
Okay, well, Talvi, really, thank you. I appreciated this.
Cheers. Thanks for having me.